Welcome to This Explainer. Today, we're stepping right into the executive boardroom to unpack a truly critical framework, the supply axis model. I want you to get into a strategic, systems-thinking mindset with me. If you look at a lot of companies on paper, their operations seem perfectly orchestrated. Procurement buys, manufacturing produces, logistics ships, and sales sells. It looks like this clean, logical blueprint, neatly structured in a calm, predictable blue. But as we all know, reality is way more volatile. So we're going to explore how we can actually transform that immense, chaotic complexity into synchronized intelligence. Let's kick things off with the supply chain butterfly effect. Now, we usually picture supply chain disruptions as these massive, unavoidable disasters, right? But actually, it's often just a tiny delay in raw materials or a slight tweak in a demand forecast, literally a butterfly flapping its wings. What starts out as a tiny ripple in one specific department suddenly shifts into this bright orange alert of disruption, radiating out and completely destabilizing the entire global network. And that brings us straight to the core reality of modern operations. It's summed up perfectly right here. Everything is connected, nothing happens in isolation. That is the absolute foundational principle of the supply axis methodology. You just can't tweak one variable without the whole system feeling it. Once we really accept that reality, it becomes totally obvious why traditional management styles are just buckling under the pressure of today's markets. But to fix it, we first have to map out exactly how that breakdown happens. Which brings us to Section 1, Fragmented Silos and Cascading Disruption. Okay, so we're entering the risk zone here. Let's look at what happens when a localized event hits a company that's still operating in fragmented silos, where departments are just totally walled off from each other. Imagine a key customer suddenly cancels a strategic order. At first glance, seems like a minor commercial hiccup, but watch the dominoes fall. Step 2, excess inventory starts piling up because the materials were already on their way. Step 3, production capacity is suddenly sitting idle. Step 4, that locked up inventory and wasted time create massive cash flow pressure. And finally, Step 5, total margin erosion. One single decision at the customer level flashes red across the entire board. It turns into this devastating financial and operational chain reaction simply because the company was managing isolated functions instead of one connected system. So, how do we stop that? How do modern organizations prevent that kind of cascading failure? Well, that leads us to Section 2, Enter SIOP and the Supply Axis Control Tower. I really want to be clear about this definition up front. A control tower is not a meeting. It's not just another bloated reporting layer. It is literally the tactical brain of the company. Just look at the balance required here. It's a central intelligence system designed specifically to protect customer satisfaction. But, and here's the kicker, it has to do so while simultaneously balancing cost, inventory, cash flow, capacity, and overall profitability. It's taking that old, sluggish, functional management style and replacing it with a highly dynamic, incredibly responsive operating model. Let's move on to Section 3, Redefining True Customer Satisfaction. To juggle all those competing factors we just talked about, this control tower needs a true north to aim for. Which brings up a seemingly simple question. What does customer satisfaction actually mean? I'm posing this directly to you because, frankly, it's where a lot of companies fail pretty miserably. They think they know what their customers want, but they end up optimizing the completely wrong metrics. Think about it. If you slash your inventory to artificially boost cash flow, but your service levels absolutely tank, well, your customers are going to leave and that revenue just disappears. So the absolutely crucial point here is that customer satisfaction is highly dynamic. Different customers value entirely different things. For some, speed is the only thing that matters. For others, it's about bulletproof reliability. And for a totally different group, general product availability is the whole shebang. The control tower has to understand exactly which of these KPIs actually move the needle for each specific segment. It has to know exactly how your customers define value, and, crucially, which failures are just straight up unacceptable. All right, Section 4, Orchestrating the Operational Ecosystem. Once we actually know what the customer truly values, well, that's when the real complexity of execution kicks in. Think of your supply chain like a massive, complex symphony orchestra. But, it's an orchestra that can fall out of tune incredibly fast. If procurement optimizes locally by only focusing on getting the cheapest price, they might buy subpar materials that totally jam up manufacturing. If production only cares about their own efficiency metrics, they might overproduce and completely bloat the inventory. If logistics is solely focused on cutting cost, guess what? Deliveries arrive late. When every single department is locally optimizing, it creates this massive systemic risk. The control tower is what provides the tactical intelligence to force every single function to think end-to-end, system-wide. Next up is Section 5, the reality of trade-offs. We are now moving into what is arguably the hardest truth in supply chain management, the reality of trade-offs. Let's face it, there are no perfect decisions, only really complex choices that have to be made under constant uncertainty. Let's put you right in the driver's seat of the control tower for a second. You're hit with a sudden disruption, and you've got to make a call right now. Authorizing emergency air freight is going to cost you $100,000 on the spot. Do you do it? I mean, it sounds like a brutal hit to your logistics budget. But wait, here's the other side of that equation. Taking on that $100,000 cost actually protects $150,000 in pure profit because it saves a massive strategic order. The real question is, does your current system actually give you the real-time visibility to see both halves of that equation? Because elite control towers absolutely do. They connect the operational trigger directly to the financial impact in real time. Let's look at another pretty painful choice. Do you lock up $1 million in cash reserves by hoarding extra inventory? Or do you sacrifice a 5% bump in your service levels? These are competing, incredibly high-stakes objectives. You are literally constantly balancing the glowing green of system optimization right against the red flags of financial risk. Or hey, how about this one? Do you intentionally wreck your absolutely perfect manufacturing plan, totally dropping your production efficiency just to serve a sudden urgent demand from a highly strategic customer? Strong control towers don't magically eliminate these uncertainties. They manage these exact probabilities intelligently. They help you decide faster, and they brilliantly balance those end-to-end constraints. Moving to Section 6, Chain of Command and Decision Governance. A tactical brain is completely useless without a central nervous system to actually carry out its commands, right? To hit this elite level of optimization, transparent data flow, and solid decision governance have to connect the entire enterprise end-to-end. Think of it as interlocking links. It's an absolute necessity. A control tower only functions if there are crystal clear roles, defined escalation paths, and really distinct decision ownership. And look, this chain of command, it's not about adding more corporate bureaucracy. It's about aligning people so that decisions actually synchronize, risks become instantly visible, and all those agonizing trade-offs we just talked about can be managed intelligently. When you finally put all of these pieces together, you achieve a total transformation. Your supply chain completely ceases to be this clunky sequence of fragmented, siloed processes. Instead, it becomes a living, breathing ecosystem. You're literally transforming chaos and complexity into synchronized, glowing green intelligence. And that leads us straight to the ultimate philosophy of this methodology, and really the core takeaway of our explainer today. One organization, one system, one decision logic, one objective: customer satisfaction with financial intelligence. Folks, that is exactly what elite performance looks like. So, as we wrap up our exploration of this framework, I want to leave you with a rather provocative question to chew on regarding your own operations. Is your supply chain just blindly reacting to the butterfly, or do you have the intelligence to orchestrate the entire system? Thank you so much for joining me for this explainer. I really hope it helps you seek out true, synchronized intelligence in your own organization.